So this is a meeting of the Wellfleet Board of Water Commissioners, Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. And we are joined by Paul Anderson, who is superintendent of the Brewster Water Department. And Paul spent a morning with us here in Wellfleet a few weeks ago, looking at our water system and making some really helpful observations, comments about it. And we asked him if he would join us for the meeting today to share that with the rest of the water commissioners. And also I was hoping that we could spend a little bit of time talking about the process they went through on the analysis of their rate structure, because I found that document be really very informative and something that we might want to consider using that consultant for assistance with the analysis that we want to do for our system. So thanks for being with us, Paul.
Absolutely.
So you're with us for a morning. So I'm sure that you have some suggestions for us.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give kind of a brief overview. I really don't have a ton to say. You know, it was a relatively short visit. Thank you so much, Karen, for taking the time, and Jim for showing me your system. Charlie Sumner had contacted me some time ago. I was hired by Charlie in Brewster 11 years ago. When he contacted me and asked if I could come and take a look, I immediately contacted my town administrator, Peter Lombardi, who is, an incredible town administrator who was more than happy to allow me time to come over and take a look at your system. So, in going through the system, I can tell you some general observations. You have a solid infrastructure. You've got 2 well fields, 1 tank. You've got 12-inch main and 8-inch main trunk lines. When it comes to distribution, my major concern would be that 4-inch line that runs out to, I think it's Coles Neck, the old landfill, where a number of private wells were contaminated by the landfill. That is not unusual, by the way. That happens all the time in towns. Landfills were really not managed that well years ago. We simply didn't know the contamination that they could cause. So a small percentage of your community is on the water system, and that's a little problematic when it comes to revenue. Obviously, even though you have a lot of, a decent amount of water main and you have some significant infrastructure, you don't have a lot of service connections. So that can complicate things when it comes to revenue. There are 2 components when it comes to a public water supply. One is domestic water. It's ensuring that you have safe domestic water that's sampled on a regular basis and managed by professional waterworks, licensed waterworks operators. And the second component is fire protection. So a lot of people will overlook the fire protection aspect of it. Obviously, domestic water kind of comes first, but interestingly enough, a lot of towns and cities initially installed water systems for fire protection. The fire hydrants are referred to as plugs sometimes. And the reason they're referred to as plugs is back in the day when there was wooden water main, they would actually dig down, drill a hole in the main and fill up buckets to put the fire out. And they would stick a plug in the wooden water main and then take measurements off buildings in case they had a fire, they'd know where to dig again, which is kind of an interesting aspect of where the term plugs came from. But fire is a big component in a municipal water supply. It's not just domestic water. ISO, which is an insurance service office, they go out and they evaluate fire departments, and 40 to 50% of the evaluation is based on your water supply, your public water supply. So you can actually get lower insurance rates, especially in commercial zoned areas for that reason. I think some of it spills over to residential, but certainly, well, definitely if you have a fire hydrant within 500 feet of your house, you'll definitely get lower insurance rates for that. So there are benefits, not just when it comes to domestic, but also fire protection for having a public water supply. I know you all know Cape Cod is the sole source aquifer. So we're all kind of in this together on the Cape. The Cape is primarily sand. So there's very little that is separating, even though there are numerous lenses of water on Cape Cod, we're all pretty much sharing the same aquifer. And all of the towns are struggling with the same thing, and that is wastewater and emerging contaminants in drinking water that are beginning to happen. So, you know, I think what it really boils down to is at some point in time, you know, in the existence of any given town, those that lead the town decide to either create a municipal water supply or not. Eventually, they always do. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, especially somewhere like Cape Cod. And the cost associated with creating a municipal water supply is significant, and it does not go down over time. So in Brewster, they pulled the trigger in 1971. In Duxbury, when I ran there, they did it in 1914. In Middleborough, it was late 1800s. So every community is a little different on when it finally says, we think we want a municipal water supply. We would like to put a water main on as many roads as we can in our community and allow fire protection and domestic water supply. You have a lot of private wells, and the private wells are plugged into the same aquifer that we're plugged into. The difference is the sampling. So the assumption is when somebody moves into a home, they sample the well. It's a very simple sample kit. It really doesn't take nearly as much consideration as what we do when it comes to sampling in a public water supply. But initially, somebody will sample the well and determine it's safe and continue to utilize that well. That doesn't guarantee that that private well is safe for drinking water. And I'm not saying that to scare anyone, but that's not my point. My point is simply that a municipal water supply is managed, and it's managed in a way to ensure that you have adequate fire protection and that you have clean drinking water. With emerging contaminants on Cape Cod, you can imagine if you have a town that is all private wells versus a municipal water supply, you're going to have to install different forms of filtration in numerous homes, as opposed to forms of filtration or treatment in a number of focal points where you have your wells for municipal. Municipal water supplies are far easier to maintain and to manage than it is to try and manage private wells throughout an entire town. You have a lot of land where you are, and I think that is very beneficial. And I think that the zoning and just driving through the town, some of it is very dense, and in those locations, it seems like it's where you focused on installing infrastructure, which is very wise. And in other locations, it seems as if there's a great deal of land around properties, which is good when it comes to a private well. You don't want densely populated areas around private wells. So it is possible for private wells to continue, but it is not a guarantee, and it completely eliminates the actual fire protection. So that is really kind of my summary in regards to your system. I was very impressed by the wells. I got to see one of the well fields. I didn't get to see the other one, but the one that I saw looked really good. I think Whitewater is doing a nice job in maintaining it. I think they're doing a fine job in maintaining it. I got to see your tank. You know, it's a newer tank, excellent. And in looking at just generally the way your layout is of your system, it looks like a system that, you know, was laid out with the exception of that 4-inch water main very well and could grow over time. So that's pretty much summarizes that as far as the overview. I do have a few recommendations I'd like to run through. Number one would be cross connection. So cross connection is any time something that is not considered drinking water is connected to your drinking water. In the water industry, we try, first of all, to eliminate any cross connection. There are cases where you can't. For instance, fire sprinkler systems in a building, you can't disconnect that. It has to be physically connected. So devices are installed in those locations to make sure that nothing that is not considered potable water can go back into your drinking water. So I would first recommend, if Whitewater hasn't done it to date, a survey, which is basically a licensed surveyor has to go into each business and commercial properties and conduct a survey to determine whether or not anything there could jeopardize the safety of your drinking water. So I just noticed driving around, there's a morgue close by. I think it's in the downtown area. You have a marina that's fed by, you know, the waterfront marina is fed by domestic water. That, you know, that's a high risk typically as well. And any buildings with fire suppression systems in them would be a risk. Those devices need to be tested annually or twice a year, sometimes depending on the degree of hazard. So that was kind of my first concern, was really cross connection, only because you're looking at the safety of your drinking water. The second one is your billing, the billing company. Karen has had a difficult time. That might have been resolved by now, but she's had a difficult time getting the billing company to share information with her. And that's unacceptable. I mean, they're being paid for a service, and they should be helping Karen in any way they can. So knowing, number one, who's connected to the system, just a basic printout of everything that they've done for the last year, I think would be very helpful for Karen, because a system that size, you could probably utilize other forms of software to produce bills, because you're really not at the point where you're big enough to require any kind of sophisticated billing system at this point. Consider hiring a licensed operator, and that would be when you're at the growth point revenue-wise, where you might want to take a little more control of your system as opposed to pay someone else to do it. And that in no way is a slight on Whitewater. I've worked with Whitewater throughout my entire career, and they are an excellent organization. Sarian is another one on Cape Cod that helps run smaller systems. They're an excellent one too. So, I'm not trying to push you away from the private sector. I'm just saying, in my experience, as a drinking water operator, owning what you're doing and, having somebody that works directly for the town seems to be more beneficial. Obviously, they're not in it for the profit. They're getting paid an hourly wage as opposed to a profit. So if they're there for 4 to 8 hours a day, you're going to get the 4 to 8 hours a day, because they're there to work. Determine how much expansion is possible with existing infrastructure. So I think it would be important to look at, what do you have? What can you pump out of the ground? How many service connections have not been utilized? I saw in looking over some of the background information that you gave me, that when you expanded the system, you installed curbs in locations, which was very wise, to homes that at this point might not be utilizing it. But just having a general idea of what you can do with what you have currently to further serve the community. And then you have an idea, if you went that direction, with what kind of revenue could be brought in with what you currently have. And then the next step would be determining how much future infrastructure would be required to service a larger population of residents in your town, should the town decide to go that direction. So those are really the key recommendations I had just in driving around. It's a good idea to know what you have, what you can serve, and then what direction do you want to go? And I think that's probably going to be more once you get a new town administrator put in place, in a conversation between you folks, the new town administrator, the select board, to see, are they ready to commit to being a full municipal water supply for the town, to a certain percentage, 50%, 75%, what percentage of the community do you think you want to serve? Or do they want to keep it where it currently is? Where it currently is probably going to have to be supported in part by the town, because I don't think you have the clientele to be independent as of yet. But again, that's a general observation. Yeah,
but I'm not sure if we told you that when the system was set up back in 1989, well, actually in the 90s, when the first expansion of it, that it was made optional for properties to hook up. Even though there was a curb stop in front of the property, there was no requirement that they had to hook up to it. And that still is the case. So that it would require kind of a change and a different mindset, so to speak, here if we were going to require more properties to actually utilize the connections that exist in front of their properties, or some sort of betterment fee.
It is complicated. I've never been in a system when it was in the creation, the genesis of a system, which is really where you are. I've inherited systems and managed them. So it would be an interesting journey. You certainly don't want people to feel as if they're being forced in any particular direction. It'd be more of a buy-in from the community in regards to having the availability of that domestic water should something go wrong with their wells. And then also understanding that, the fire protection aspect of it. Whether you have a hydrant in front of your house or not, I'm guessing there's a hydrant relatively close to the fire department. I'm just guessing that the water main is probably relatively close to the fire department. So they are going to fill off of your water system when they go to fight a fire. It's the easiest thing for them to do. They have an existing source that they can pull up to and hook onto a truck to fill a tanker truck should they need to go fight a fire. And that is a benefit, not just, to the people who have frontage on water main, but also to the people who do not have frontage, is that availability of water that you have up sitting in your tank and your wells running daily to allow that level of safety. So there, and when you do a rate study, those types of things will come into play, because they'll look at it and say, listen, you are a portion of your pumping every day is just to ensure that that tank is full enough and there's enough water should there be a structure fire. So things like that come into play, that maybe more than just people who have frontage should be paying into the water system, because the water system is benefiting than just the people who are tapped into it from a fire prevention point of view. But again, that is over my head. I have not conducted a rate study myself. You could do it. I could do it. Rates are really operating budget, capital, whether it be bonded or taken from retained earnings, and then indirects. Those three are what play a part in a rate study. But what a rate study will also do is look at things like a service connection fee, or if somebody's hooked up for a fire sprinkler system, what should they get charged? Because even though they're not using the water is there ready for ready for their fire protection. So rate studies can get complicated when you're looking at a situation like yours, and trying to do it yourself, although you could do it, it's usually better received from the public when it's done by a third party and not by those who are invested, in the utility system.
Understood. Yeah. One of the things that what we have talked about getting someone in from an outside, consultant, such as Pioneer, Pioneer Group, to assist us in that. In fact, Charlie suggested today when I talked with him that we really should pursue this. The town should pursue it, and he will support that with our select board, that we do that. So
I agree. If nothing else, he'd be able to give you a snapshot of where you are financially, and give you an idea of what type of impact the rates are going to have on the community of the people who are currently connected, and then what your options are in regards to fees associated with commercial businesses, or whether or not you entertain the idea of actually assessing fees for other homes that have access to fire hydrants in front of it and things of that nature. But yeah, I think having a consultant, you can go with Pioneer. I can give you a name of other consultants as well. I've utilized a number of them in my career, but Pioneer is a very good one. They've done more than one rate study for me in more than one town that I've worked for.
yes, well, we'd happily take any suggestions in terms of potential, companies to work with on this. So, and we will reach out to them. So, in fact, I assume we will need to get a number of quotes as we move forward here.
Yeah, and another key component with rate studies is really trying to figure out what's your intention and what's your capital plan really for the future. It shouldn't be too hard to put together the operating budget. That'll come together pretty quickly. But what they're going to be concerned about is what type of money do you intend on spending? If you're just doing a 3-year study, it's not that bad. But if you're looking further out and you're trying to be honest with the community as you're making these decisions, you might want to go a little more in depth, and that's when you'd have an engineering firm involved. And the engineering firm, I believe you have one, a consultant that you folks use, would look at your system. They'd make recommendations on what type of capital you should be looking at in the future and what those time periods are. And then they would take that information and hand that over to your rate consultant, who would build on that and give you a number of different possibilities based on capital. You're going to be pretty much capital driven not so much operating because it's a smaller system.
I'm not sure if we talked about this when you were here, but we are in the process now of preparing to install a new water main from the older well site, one that would be 8-inch rather than the 4-inch that currently exists there. So that will eliminate the deficiency there that we have now in terms of not being able to pump an adequate amount of water to supply the system in the event that our primary well source fails. So, interestingly, looking at the report that Jonathan sent us for August, I noticed that the daily pumping or the daily consumption in the system was about 75,000 gallons a day on the total system. And the distribution system from the Colesnick well field is limited to a maximum of about 40,000 gallons a day, given the size of the 4-inch water main that's out there. So it's obvious that particularly in the summer months when we have a higher usage on the system, that it's inadequate to meet our daily demands.
Yeah, the summer demand on Cape Cod is tough on suppliers. We go, roughly 500,000 gallons a day in the winter, and then during the summer, we'll 3.5 million gallons a day is entirely possible. So the population fluctuation on Cape Cod is massive, and that is also something that a rate consultant can look at, and they can say, well, the rates, you can adjust rates so that if you exceed a certain amount of gallons within a time period, the rate goes up. And that is to try and make people who are using water more than others pay for more of the water that they're using, as opposed to the folks who are only using 50,000 gallons a year. Somebody is using 150,000 gallons a year. They can adjust that rate structure so the people using the 150 are paying more for that water, because everyone else in the community is going to have to pay for an additional well field for additional work to be done on the system based on that pumpage. So it would be interesting to see as they look at your pumping, and they will look at that, and they'll look at what you're getting from for consumption in each of the businesses and homes, and it's very thorough, the investigation they do.
One of the things you mentioned was about the routine inspections from the cross connections, potential cross connections in the system, particularly in commercial establishments. That is something that Whitewater is going to be undertaking very soon for us to do those inspections.
That is excellent. It's, cross connections, they do happen. They've happened in my career. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does happen, it can be very dangerous, even deadly. So, even though the likelihood of it happening, you have to kind of imagine in your head, what would have to happen is you'd have to have a water main break, have that water main be isolated, dewatered so they can make the repair. Anything connected in that area where they isolated that water main will now suck anything back into the water main.
Mm-hmm.
So
it really is,
and it happens,
as well as backflow prevention, right?
Yes.
So that is something that we will be looking at with them. Any questions by anybody else? I see everybody's muted.
Yeah. No. Actually, I was just wondering if you have any experience with Ty and Bond or any of the other companies that are out there that have done rate studies.
Ty Bond does one, I believe it's pretty much annually. They've been running one for years, rate study wise. Rate studies are tough though, because a lot of the things that come, the information that they get isn't always clean. For instance, the town of Sandwich is a water district, so they look just at the rates, per 100,000 gallons, that kind of thing. The town of Sandwich also has a district tax that's right on your tax bill, which isn't incorporated into that rate study. So a rate evaluation. So Ty Bond, does a study with say 500 municipal water supplies, and it'll get you in the ballpark of what, what is typical. Usually it's good just to look around you, honestly, neighboring communities that are similar, to see what their rate structure is, and that'll give you an idea. What is the average water bill? What's a high water bill? What's a low water bill? If that's the question that you were going with, Kurt, or were you looking more in regards to Ty Bond conducting a rate study for you?
I was thinking more to have them conduct it for us. We're as you can tell by what Jim just said about our peak water use of 75,000 gallons a day in the summertime, relative to 3 million in Brewster, we're real small. Our biggest problem is that we don't have enough connected customers. We got a huge amount of infrastructure. So our challenge is actually getting those. I think with only about 70 more customers, the system would be self-sustaining. So we don't need a whole lot of new customers to get to a revenue standpoint where we're self-sustaining. And beyond that, right now our marginal cost of water is probably negative, because we're dumping water at a lot of times during the year because we don't have enough connected customers due to our pH control. So we need users is the big challenge, as opposed to, being in a situation where we would have to make additional capital investments to add new customers. We're completely in the other direction right now.
No, I think they do a fine job with that. I've worked with Ty Bond in the past. They're an excellent firm. Absolutely. You could definitely entertain bringing them in, I'd recommend bringing a number of consultants in to see how they can help you. But yes, Ty Bond is definitely qualified, no doubt.
Any others that you might recommend or suggest that you worked with?
Typically, it's more the engineering aspect of it. I mean, I think the rate study is not going to be that hard. I think it's really more, what you were saying in regards to, you don't have enough customers, but if you did, if everybody hooked up that has frontage on water main right now, you could run a self-sufficient department. Sorry, that's my dog. She's driving me a little crazy tonight. So yeah, I think it's a combination really of having an engineering firm come in and help you look at what would be the easiest way to expand your system, what would be most beneficial, and then roll into it the idea of the rate study. Because you're right, if you don't have enough revenue coming in right now, you simply don't have enough revenue, and you're going to be supplemented by the general budget, which never goes over well. So I think you're kind of at that seesaw, that teetering point of almost being independent, being able to grow on your own, and still needing assistance from the town to continue to operate. So I think it's going to involve a combination, honestly, of engineering and a rate study.
Jonathan or John Aprea, either of you have any comments or questions?
No, I don't, Jim.
Thank you. And thank you again for the report you did.
No problem.
Ask the question.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
All we've talked about right now, and I agree with most of it, all of it. We're going to have to do sell this idea to the town, individual well owners. A lot of resistance here to just hooking up to anybody, any system. They don't even like hooking up to the Comcast or the power. Did you use any advertising firms?
Advertising firm for what, Tom?
You need to sell our system. I do know there's a lot of resistance. Oh, I have my own. Did you have any experience with using the advertising or something like that?
Just give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Dog. I'm back. So yes, to your point, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. To your point, I was going to say the same thing. If I heard you right, and I could only hear a bit of it because it kept coming in and out. There is an aspect of sales here when it comes to trying to get other folks to hook up to your water systems. Obviously, you have some people who have chosen not to hook up and have the option. And then there is trying to figure out where you should install future water mains so that more people hook up in those locations. So I think, Tom, to what you were saying, were you basically saying kind of a sales aspect of selling the idea of hooking up to town water?
Not to the board or not to the selectmen or anything, but to the individual.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime a town is at the stage that you're at, where you're looking at expanding a municipal water supply, there is going to be, whether you call it sales or just trying to lay out exactly what's going on so that folks can make an informed decision. So you could say to residents, when's the last time you tested your well? Have you tested your private well? Do you test it regularly? Are you aware of emerging contaminants in drinking water on Cape Cod? Do you know of the considerations of PFAS and things of that nature, nitrates in water? And so yes, and you certainly don't want to come at it from a scare tactic because people get very resistant to that. I do myself. I don't like being intimidated into anything, but more of just an informational, outreach to folks, letting them know that the reason that municipal water supplies are created are these reasons. These are the reasons. It's for fire protection, and it's to ensure that you have clean drinking water, and professionals that are operating that to ensure that it's clean drinking. Not we think it is. It absolutely is. That level of professionalism, and that is a municipal water supply.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank Paul for his time and his suggestions. We'll look forward to, if you can provide us with the names of any other companies. And I know I heard this Pioneer Consulting Group would be one that Brewster had used. We have spoken with folks from Ty and Bond. So if there are any others, please, by all means, just send them along to Karen and she can get that out to us.
I can absolutely do that. I'm part of the Barnstable County Water Utility Association, so I can send an email out to all the superintendents on the Cape and find out who they've used as well, to give you an extensive list of folks that people have used, not just in my experience, but so you can look at those as well. And on that note, I just want to thank Karen for everything she did. She's been tremendous to work with. She does a fantastic job, trying to sort through things that are tough to sort through. And Jim, you as well, in taking the time to show me your system. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you're
Thank
welcome.
you, Paul. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Well, I'm sure you've got a long agenda, so I'm going to leave you to it unless you have any other questions.
That's it. Thank you very much.
You bet. Take care, folks. Good luck.
Thanks, Paul.
You bet.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. So I'd like to ask Jonathan or John Pfa to give us an update on a few of these next items that we have here. On the Boy Scout camp wells, the depth sensors, and the plan, what's recommended that we do there. I did talk to Charlie Sumner today about the quote from Butch Nealon for the repairs that are required. But I think it would be helpful, Jonathan, if you could kind of explain what you guys found when you did the manual kind of depth test out there for those two wells at the Boy Scout camp.
Yeah, so basically we measured the depth of water. We measured the depth of the wells, which are the same, about 150 feet deep, with roughly 71 feet of water in both wells, which had been, that was kind of the question, why are why was the SCADA system reflecting differently, that there was such a difference in water from one well to the other when they're only approximately 50 feet apart. So that was more of a scaling issue, which at this point has been corrected to Butch's best ability. The sensors are also sitting at different depths in the wells, which is not ideal. And we would like to correct that. And also we found a big splice in one of the cables that the sensor is attached to, which can affect its accuracy and could be showing a depth of water level that is, it could fluctuate more, or it could just simply be inaccurate. So that's the bottom line.
So the quote from Butch Nealon of Cape Water Resources was for 2,825 to replace the sensors in both wells and also to fix the connection to from the sensors to the surface. And I think we're prepared to go ahead and tell them to do that. And so we'll sign off on that and get it back to him. So he'll need to kind of coordinate that with you guys. Obviously, we'd like to get it done in the fall here. So.
All right, I can do
Jim,
that.
yeah, Jim, just a question. It's maybe not relevant to the contract, but really scaling issue, John, when they sensors, and given that there was a change scaling factor for sensors, is there a way to back correct that and also to make sure data going forward is consistent?
I didn't
Sorry.
quite get all of that.
Did I go down? Was I underwater?
A little bit.
Sorry about that. The question was not necessarily related to the contract, but related to the data. Given that they made a scaling change to one of the sensors, is there a way to back correct the data so that it's consistent, and also replace the sensors to make sure that the data going forward is consistent with the historical data?
I would think to back, to change anything would just be a matter of here's how far off we were, and you just add it to your numbers or subtract it, whatever you had to do. Moving forward, we now, we physically measure the depth of the water, so we'll always be on top of whether they're correct or not. So once they're put in, moving forward, the numbers on the panel should be the same as the numbers that are being read from the sensors in the wells.
And just to add to that, I believe it comes all as one piece, the sensor and the cable that will run continually right into the SCADA panel on the inside. And the sensors are different based on the depth of the well or how deep it's sitting in the well. So they will be replaced, and they come with a range, whether it's 150 feet to 300 feet or whatever it might be. So he'll make sure we have the most accurate reading with the appropriate sensor for the depth.
Yeah, my concern is, given the amount of controversy over drought and whether we're affecting the hydrology in the area, et cetera. We're a little sensitive, especially relative to some questions that we've got from the public and from members of the Board of Selectmen about exactly what's going on. And I just want to be very, very careful that our data set is accurate and can stand that kind of muster, if you know what I mean.
As I said, it's being monitored physically now. Plus, there's a monitoring well out there as well. And what that does is it just measures what's in the ground. So if you leave the wells in an off state, maybe for 10 minutes or whatever, and the water will get back into them, and then you measure your groundwater. Say you do that in July, get a certain number, do the same thing in August, September, every month, do it the same way every month. you'll be able to tell the water, not just what's going into the wells, but what's available to go into the wells. And most water systems do it that way.
Right, and yeah, and that's the question that people have, you know, are we affecting it or not?
Exactly. So we'd have a little better idea. I don't see a lot of monitoring wells. Actually, I saw one, and it's between the two wells.
Right.
I took a walk in the woods. I did not find any others. Usually a water plant like that would have more. So you can check, you know, a radius around to see how the water is getting affected. But we'll use what we have for now and, you know, record everything, and that'll just be a good way to move forward.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing more on the Boy Scout camp wells, I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about the sanitary survey and the corrective action plan that was submitted. Jonathan, do you want to take us through that?
Yes, I could. So the survey itself was actually quite a while ago now,
In June,
but so there were a couple of table B corrective actions. First was all floor drains in the pump house areas must be registered in accordance with underground injection control regulations. And we need to submit transmittal forms and a permit to DEP for that. The second, and that'll be for both pump stations, so both Boy Scout and Coles Neck. The second was process instrumentation waste from continuous analyzers and sampling sinks must discharge into a class 5 well, and that must also be registered in accordance with the regulations. And the third was just to write an alarm testing procedure, which has been done now. So the first two are kind of grouped together. It's basically just making sure they basically want to know the water that flows through our pH analyzer and in the sinks in there is discharged into a dry well that's registered, and they want an idea of how much water a day that is, and it's just to protect the groundwater. It's all stemming from groundwater regulations. And EPG is helping us out with the forms that need to be submitted.
let me ask, have you identified where that the drain is, or the dry well is for at the Boy Scout camp?
I physically have not dug it up. I just have an idea of where it's supposed to be according to the plans, the IFC plans from 2010 or whatever that was.
Right. And it's much murkier in terms of the Coles Neck well field where that discharge pit is there.
Yeah, I walked around in the woods out there for 15 or 20 minutes, and I was trying to find, the plans actually show a monitoring well out there that I was trying to reference to get an idea where that dry well might be, and I couldn't even find the monitoring well. So, you know, I used the metal detector all through the woods, and I didn't find anything. But
So I thought when we talked with Paul Millette, I mean, his suggestion was that we kind of append the work, particularly at the Coles Neck well field, to the plan for the construction of the new water main out there, and that would be into the spring, and that's what we submitted in the documentation back to DEP.
correct. So he's going to take care of everything that needs to be submitted for the Boy Scout well, including the permits and all the forms by the due date. And then we essentially said there's going to be construction going on over the winter. And if a new dry well and drain pipe needs to be installed, you'd like to group that into the work that's already going to be done down at that station.
Right. Any questions from anybody on that?
I'm all set on that. That looked pretty good.
Okay.
Sounds better now.
Kurt, you're okay?
Yeah, yeah, I just, just that, the only comment I had was that we will be in compliance with all the DEP requirements by what, March or April of next year?
Yes.
So,
And that's what's said in Paul's memorandum explains that it'll be out then.
and it's not that we won't ever, that we will not ever be in compliance, but we will be in compliance by next
We will
April.
be in compliance, but it's going to take longer than what they had asked for.
Right, but than what they'd like to see.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. So that's those two items. The next thing is the PFA testing status, and I don't know whether John, whether you were handling this.
Yeah, and I revisited it and I got an apology letter, which I think you might have gotten a copy of. It wasn't really an apology letter, but the guy said he dropped the ball and he apologizes. And this Saturday, I got the kit delivered to my house, and I'm going to drop that kit off tomorrow morning, and it'll be down in Wellfleet for Jonathan to take those samples as soon as he wants.
Okay. Yeah. And we have to submit something in October, is that correct?
Myself,
Starting
okay, go ahead,
in
Jonathan.
October, we'll be sampling the first month of each quarter for the next year, starting October 1st. So even though this is the free sampling kit, we'd still like to complete that just to get an idea where we are. But come October, we're still required to sample again. And we'll do that every 4 months or every 3 months for the next year. And different action items will come of different results. So let's just hope for the best.
Okay.
If we don't show any PFAS over this sampling period, what's the requirement, if any, going forward after that?
Off the top of my head, don't quote me on this, but I believe the frequency might drop to just twice a year or annually maybe, but don't quote me on that. I believe you have to complete you have to complete 4 samples no matter what.
Sure. Yeah, no, I was thinking if there's an ongoing requirement now for PFAS, because this is a voluntary program that we're in now. Right.
Starting October, it's a regulation. It's not. It's a new regulation, a new requirement as of October 1st. But I can get back to you guys and send some more information to you if you want.
It's online. I know I did see it someplace, but I don't remember whether it's annually thereafter. Yeah. And I have a memorandum from them that explains where to find the information, the reference guide. So we can look that up. So I just had one other question for you, Jonathan, before we let you go. I see you had that you have a number of work orders that you guys have been working on.
Yeah, that's going through outstanding issues that we've had with meters and just trying to make sure all information for everyone hooked up on the system has all the proper information documented, and that Penachuk has that information, so the proper bills are being sent to people. So we're slowly getting through that, and that pace will pick up. So our goal is to have a 100% complete read file come November when we need to bill again.
Okay. And do you know how many properties we have that you have not been able to read up to this point?
They're,
Jim, I can get you that information. I just don't have it at my fingertips right now, but I can get you that number.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've closed about 20 work orders to date. And a lot of them have been like replacing the radios with the new Neptune radios. So we've fixed a lot of issues with the reading capabilities with just switching out the radios.
Okay. Kurt or Tom, do either of you have any more questions of Jonathan or John?
Well, I think when I read that thing, it sounded fairly complete, optimistic, but I think
Yeah, it looked good to me. It looked good to me too. Jim, looked fantastic. You know, the only other questions, and I think for another meeting is just, I'm kind of curious where we are. You know, Karen brought it up, but you know, where we are in the radio replacements and ultimately, you know, meter replacements that we've been talking about. I'm not sure we've got a definitive plan yet.
No, we don't. We don't have a full, not a full one anyway. So,
Yeah.
but I do want to just, if there are no more questions of Jonathan or John, I would just like to let them go. So, because, and
Jim?
we can continue with a couple of the other items that we have on our agenda.
Jim, I have a question for you.
Sure.
The cross connection, do you want me to proceed with getting the guy down to do the surveys?
Yes. I mean, that we know has to be done. I mean, to comply with DEP.
Right,
Yes, we do want, and that's Curtis, right?
that'll be correct. Right, exactly. I will shoot you the date when I get the date. I'll send out an email right now saying that you'd like to do it. And I'll shoot you a date and keep you informed on what he's doing for hours and all that.
Good. All right. And the only reason that I kind of was pushing away from the schedule for the meters, Kurt, or the radios, is that I think we still have to, we have to know where we better stand with in terms of finances. And that's something I'm hoping that Charlie Sumner is going to be able to give us more information about that in the coming weeks.
from our standpoint, we're doing everything we can to diagnose the problem and just replace a radio if the meter still works. We've only replaced 2 meters at this point.
Right.
So,
But if we can't read one, then you've got to, and it requires some sort of replacement. We've got to take care of that.
right.
Does that kind of answer it, Kurt?
Yeah, as we know, the problem's just going to get worse anyway. So, I mean, I think we're on top of it. I just wanted to rate, I know it's top of mind and some visibility, but it'd be great to kind of, get it checked off the plate.
Yeah.
And I think Charlie, I hope Charlie's back with, an affirmative read on, this being part of the water main extension.
Right. All right. Well, Jonathan and John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next thing, Karen, I was hoping you could give us a more of an update on the meter reading,
Sure.
deferred payments.
Okay. So currently what's happening is I've got 9 customers that did not pay me their 10-year connection lien for this year. So I'm talking with one person now about getting their entire lien paid off. And we've got an outstanding amount of $5,700 of back payments that we're chasing down. So I'm at least working with one person to get her to finish paying off her lien. And basically we told them, if you don't pay your lien, we're going to apply it to your property taxes. So one way or the other, we'll get that money in. Then I was asked by town council to go forth and go through all the customers who are part of that 10-year lien connection process and get them current to 2021. Now, we know that there wasn't anybody in the position, and there's a whole host of reasons why people didn't get billed and they're not current on all their payments. And it looks like it's $66,000 we're owed just to get current to 2021. So I've gotten 5 or 6 calls today alone. People more than happy to make their payments and or pay off their loan altogether, which I think is a step in the right direction. So the next topic I have is new customers. We're working with 2 customers right now who want to connect. One gentleman has his lien already paid off, so all he has to do is, you know, come in, do the paperwork, and get a meter and get that hooked up. And the other customer is a brand new site, so they're, you know, in the process of getting their septic system in, digging, you know, digging the trenches, and we're keeping on top of that. So, and they paid their lien off in full.
Is that the Oak Ridge property?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Okay.
Okay, so now we move on to water usage. We have people who are over 120 days not paying their water bill. And that amount comes to $11,000. I was instructed to put on a 14% interest fee on that letter. And they were notified, or they will be notified, that that will be put on their real estate taxes if they don't pay it. So I'm in the process now of getting those bills ready to get mailed. I'll mail them like around the 15th, so that'll be like at the end of the week. And then my next mission is to work with and put together letters for the people who are now 60 days not paying their water bill. So there's quite a few of those as well. So it's just a matter of, go ahead, Jim.
Aaron, let me ask you, are we confident that all those people that are out, that you're talking about, that are out 120 days, that they have in fact, or they were in fact billed for you know, for those usage fees
Yeah.
back 120 days ago?
Yes, they were billed. Yes, they were billed. Yep. Same with the 60-day people. They were all billed. Now, was it an estimate? That's one thing, or was it the actual? That's another, but they're not paying it. They're not paying anything. So I'm working on that. I had been talking with Paul Anderson, as you know, and we started talking about the cross-contamination issue. So I put together the list of commercial properties, restaurants, banks, funeral homes, condos, retail, and service companies. And Kurt, who does the testing or the surveying of the properties, only had 15 accounts on his list. And I was able to come up with 63. So he has quite a hurdle to go through to look at all those.
And it's 63 properties that fit the criteria, or
63 commercial properties or restaurants or funeral homes, bank, condos, retail, and service companies. There's 63 of them. He only had a small list and he had no idea that we had all of these in town.
so, and you've seen the regulations on this, correct?
Yes,
So then, I mean, all 63 of these businesses fit the criteria for that have to be inspected for backflow prevention or cross contamination.
yes, yes.
I'm surprised that there are that many.
So, we got a call, or I got a call from the, I'm not the chief, but the superintendent of the fire department, telling me that there was a problem with one of our hydrants. Apparently it was leaking water. And so we ended up getting a quote from, Robert B. Orr, and it looked like about $7,000 to replace that hydrant and to get it repaired. Luckily, Jonathan had gone out and he was able to find a gasket to fit it, and he was able to fix the hydrant, which was great because that saved us $7,000. In the meantime, I had called the insurance company who covers the town, and see if there was any insurance to cover that hydrant. So they said, well, they weren't sure, and to go ahead and put in for the damages and, put in for the $7,000 and see what would happen. So luckily, again, Jonathan had it fixed, but here's my concern. My concern is we don't have any funds for emergencies like this. We don't have a contingency fund to go to, because we don't have $7,000 in our budget to go and fix a fire hydrant. And I'm just nervous that we just don't have that kind of ability right at this point in time.
Well, that was part of my reason for meeting with Charlie Sumner today, to make him aware that we need to have funds available for these kinds of emergency expenses. He understands that, and he said, if you got to do it, you got to do it. So that's that's understood. The 25,000 that we had in our budget up until this past year, something that we're looking to have restored, and he had put it down as something that we will continue to discuss prior to the town meeting that's planned for December, that we would be talking about getting that reinstated into our budget in this year.
Okay. All right. I've just got two more topics to go over. The next one is regarding the fire hydrants. We've got 78 fire hydrants, and I have in my office survey. Somebody went out and surveyed all the fire hydrants in 2015. And it looks like there are a number of issues with our fire hydrants, having the wrong tag numbers, they're painted the wrong colors, they can't be opened. Some of them look like they need risers, and a lot of them are encapsulated in hedges. So those hedges have to be cut back. So one of the things that I talked to Jonathan about is, we've got to get this current. 2015 is not a good year to have our fire hydrants inspected. They're supposed to be inspected every year. So he's got Mike going to do that in the fall, but it's a lot of work and nobody's really done anything. So I just want to make sure when we're writing that RFP that we make sure that the hydrants are looked at every year.
Well, I'd like to see that list.
Sure.
Because that
I'll
the
send it to you.
hydrants that are out by the transfer station are not operable.
Right. But they
Because-
need to be able to be opened.
No, we don't use those out there because they don't want to.
No, I know. All right, there's two of them. One is 10 Lawrence Road they can't open it. And the other one that can't be opened is on Coles Neck and Pole Dyke Road. They can't open it.
Yeah, that one is
I'll
inoperable.
send you that list.
Okay, but okay. So just have the list in the office. When I come in, I'll take a look at that.
Sure,
And
I've got it. I've got it with me now.
Yeah, I'd like to see that list you have of the commercial properties that are subject to inspection for the cross-contamination and backflow prevention.
Okay, I got
So
them
I'll
all
look at
together
that.
right with me. Okay, and the next thing is Petachuk. As you know, we're really having a lot of problems with them. They won't give me any information that I need. And then I read the contract, and in the contract, it states that for me to get my own mailing list, when I complete my contract and have completed working with them, and we're not working with them anymore, it's going to cost me $5,400 to get my database. So what I'm doing now is I am putting together our own database with mailing addresses for all the customers that we are billing. And I'm looking up all the mailing addresses, and the only problem is we don't have phone numbers. So we're kind of working from scratch, but I just wanted to make you aware that we can pull the billing in-house. I've talked to Brewster, and Paul
Can
has
you hear me?
put me in touch with somebody that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you hear me? You might be able to, if you have just a list of names, you might be able to give them to the tax assessor, and they have the database. They've got all that stuff in the database, and they can just do it for you electronically.
I'm also the assistant town clerk. I have access to that. So those are not updated. They will not be updated until October. They're only updated once a year. So if a property's sold, it's not updated. So it's kind of an obsolete database. So
Well, yeah, but it might be, well, anyway, it's obviously up to you, but it was just a thought because it may be, you might be able to get, you know.
well, I use that, and I use the mailing, what little address information I have from Petachuk, and that's all I have to go by. Otherwise, I have to go through each one to make sure that it hasn't been sold. I have to put a list together. I got to send it to Nancy so she can change it. So it's not like a dump the database and everything's cool. It's, you got to verify everything, who they're, talking with. I can see the names on the addresses, but I don't have their mailing addresses. So I have to rely on Nancy's database. But as I said, it's not current. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Well,
Nothing's clean.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you
Karen,
for
I
all that hard
think-
work, and thank you for,
Yeah.
taking that on. That's a really big task.
I'd like to see that contract with, when I'm over in the office, I'd like to see the contract with Penachuk, because we don't have it.
I have a copy.
Okay, good.
It's hard for me to imagine that they would charge us for our database. That's just like crazy.
Well, that's how they get you, because they're getting updated, like the mail comes back to them, so they get all the new mailing addresses and phone numbers if they have to do the work orders, but they kept it from us so that they can charge us. So when
Okay.
we're done with them,
Does
we
does
gotta
it
pay
say
them.
that,
It's like a $5,400.
does it say that in the contract, Karen? That we're not
Yes.
entitled to it?
Doesn't say we're not entitled to it. If we want the information, we have to pay for the information.
No, that doesn't make sense.
Doctors do it all the time.
What?
Yes, they
Doctors do
do.
it all the time.
But this, I mean, that's why I want to see the contract to see,
Yeah.
because if necessary, we'll get this over to legal counsel. They can't hold us, hostage here for the data for our own system. They don't own it.
Well, I've talked to Mary. Well, they're updating it, so they think they own it, but I've talked to Mary, and she's gonna talk with town council to see what we can do about getting our own data back. And so she's working on that, and it's just a shame that we didn't catch it before somebody signed off on it, but it
Well,
is what it is.
Yeah,
We
this
just have
goes
to
back several
fix
years.
what we can.
Yeah.
No, this year. It got signed this year.
Good.
One of the other things I can do is ask them for a copy of all the bills when the bills go out in November. And maybe they'll be lenient with me to give me all the bills that went out so that I have a copy of every bill, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, well, there's, if you're finished with that, there's two things that I
Yep.
want to bring up with the rest of the water commissioners here, and that was the issue of the Harborside Village. I mean, I don't know, Kurt, did you have any discussion with the folks over there?
No, I wanted to make everybody aware that they had reached out. They were very interested in talking about the Mayo Creek restoration, and they've got a committee that's formed now. It sounds like to look more, more neutrally at whether, there might be impacts or not, and just to assess what they might be. And, in that context, I thought it would be, we'd be in a great position if we could just simply say to them, the Board of Water Commissioners, has agreed to provide service in the event they wanted it. And, it takes away a significant concern that they have. And, I don't know that they'd ever, that they ever would follow up and actually want water. When I looked at the rates that they're paying their current engineering company to manage the, their water supply, we could, if we offered them service and gave them a master metered rate that's pretty close to what we're charging other customers, it's probably pretty close to break even for them. So, I think.
Are you still there? Sounds like we may have lost him.
And
There he is. Kurt?
I can hear.
You're fading out.
You're
How about now?
It's better.
good.
Okay. What we're saying is, for water system, have a particular customer, very advantageous. It's an area of town where we are in the winter time, having to spill to pH levels. They have enough of a wintertime population that we might not be. It could be a position where we're not dumping water drain if we had them as a customer. And obviously, there's a big, it may be a commodity addition to revenue potentially. I think it'd be pretty helpful for the system. I think they're using, I think it was around, it was a couple million gallons a year that they're using alone. So it would be a pretty significant customer.
But I don't think we can promise them a rate or a connection fee until we've done this analysis, the financial analysis, or at least some form of it.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to promise them, a rate. I do think we, given the number of customers and given the benefits to the system, to do a master meter drop for them, I kind of feel like that's a no-brainer. They're a one-off. They're a one-off customer where we've done something similar for Cumberland Farms because of their, because of what they contributed and so on. In this particular case, I see a major contribution to overall system function, especially in the wintertime. And we're only talking a couple thousand, whatever it is, $6,000 or $7,000 for a normal connection. And just simply to say, hey, look, we'll provide water service, especially given the fact that the town's in a position of legal liability with the Mayo Creek restoration if they don't have water, and we could be forced to do it under really draconian terms if it came to that. I just think it's a goodwill thing, and it doesn't really cost us anything.
But I think that the difference, Cumberland Farms paid for the installation of the water main. There was no connection fee other than that, but they're paying that when they pay. I don't think that they've even gotten a bill yet. I don't know. Karen, you probably can tell us whether or not they've been billed for water yet.
Yeah, they've been billed.
Okay, but
They have.
they're getting billed at the same rates that everybody else on the system is getting billed at.
And that's what I was
Correct.
pointing out. I think even if we were charging 8, I'm not suggesting that we offer them a rate, but even if we were charging them what we're charging other customers, I think it's pretty close to break even for them. So even at that rate, I think it might be attractive to them.
Well, if that, we could do that analysis. If you think it's, how many million, 1 million gallons a year?
I have the data in a spreadsheet. Barry did send it over to me. But you know what I'm trying to do at this point is just try to create some goodwill between them and the town.
Right, but I think what we ought to do is apply the current rate structure to their, to that, whatever their usage has been, particularly during the summer months. And I thought that it would be excessive because our rate structure goes up so quickly.
Well, yeah, exactly. It would be if we did that, but I think because you're looking at something like 75 or 100 customers, you could easily justify a flat rate because you can also you divide the usage by the number of customers, and it wouldn't look like you certainly wouldn't want to charge them like a single residential customer using that much water.
Well, what about a single commercial customer?
Well, we have a rising block, multi-tiered block rate right now for all customers, and I'm not sure on a cost basis that's not really justified for our system at the current time. But again, if we had, think of it this way, if we actually took on 100 customers at HVCC and we put meters on every single one of those customers and billed them for their individual water usage, the cost would be exorbitant. Both, we'd charge them, but it would be just a ridiculous amount of money. And they're relatively small users. These aren't large users at all. They're single, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom trailers. So we don't have any customers on the system that currently look like that anyway. It's definitely not a commercial type use, because of the nature of that residential feature. So at a minimum, if we were going to look at it, I think we would argue that, and they would argue that you need to divide by the number of users on the system to figure out what the average use per resident is, and you'd find that falls into our block 1 rate structure. It wouldn't fall, more than likely wouldn't fall into anything beyond that.
Well, I think that, again, I think this needs to be part of the larger question of a rate analysis. If we're going to do that, say, since it's a master meter for those 80 properties or whatever, there's 1 meter, that how does that then, obviously we can't bill at those higher rates then, but I still think we need to check that because we've got other customers on the system who are several, maybe several units in a single property, and they are paying at higher rates. So would we have to extend the same benefit to those folks as well?
No, because it's a different, this is it'd be a separate rate structure entirely for them. It's a master meter rate. Nobody else could qualify for that rate, based on the
But if
terms of usage.
if we have a condo community right now, and that has 4 or 5 units, and it's on a single meter, they're paying the higher rates when they go over the 20,000 gallons, in a 6-month period. And it's not split in 6, it's not divvied up 6 ways.
I thought, Kurt, you were offering just that we would be available. have to negotiate the contract if they chose us. We're
Well,
talking rates, were you?
no. I'm actually, what I'm talking to them about has nothing to do with water per se. It's really about Mayo Creek restoration, and the town's got a liability, to HVCC, in the sense that if Mayo Creek restoration should impact their water supply, by potentially introducing salinity, for example, the town would be on the hook to fix that, no matter what. The town would have to pay.
You're
for
saying that
damage.
you want the trailer park penalty, getting into that situation, that we're available to do that as a business proposition rather than anything else. You weren't offering them a price, as I understood it.
Them anything. I'm having a discussion. My feeling overall town liability restoration, and that it's probably in the town's best interests to just simply offer them water to take away any potential liability.
Right.
But I don't disagree with you on that, but I think that's clearly something that's going to require legal counsel's advice. And because it could impact other people on the system as well.
Yeah, I mean, whatever course of action the board is comfortable pursuing, I'm all for. My hope was just to get some action so we can try to move forward. Whether it's legal counsel, or whatever other opinions we feel we need to make a decision. I'm not suggesting we rush this or anything like that. We have been talking about it for a long time, so meetings coming up. So.
Kurt, what I told Barry when I spoke to him last about this is that we would not be making any decisions in the near future, but that we would hope that we would have, a better answer for them about the availability of water by spring, in the sense that, we could then hopefully provide them with a plan for a connection fee and a usage fee or fees. That would not create any problems for other customers on the system.
Yeah, I think we could get an opinion from my prior experience in rate design, when I was doing it at Boston Edison, we had rate structures for we probably had 40 different rate structures, and they varied based on the terms of usage, which were cost-based. So for example, a large commercial customer, medium commercial customer, a small commercial customer, industrial, residential, we had just unbelievable numbers of rates, all approved by the Department of Public Utilities. And basically the differentiation between any customer class really had to do with the cost of providing service to that customer. And once you have a different cost structure to provide service to that customer, you have every right and obligation to offer them a rate structure that's appropriate for the cost structure. And like I said before, with somebody who's master metered and 75 individual residential customers, we don't have anybody like that on the system. That's a completely different cost structure, and it's way cheaper for everybody because it's master metered. You don't have the readings involved. I mean, there's huge cost savings associated with the system for that type of customer. And it's, I hear the condo analogy, but that's 3 customers, potentially on a master meter. And that would be differentiated under, another rate structure, potentially as a small, small condo customer. You'd have small condo, medium condo, large condo. Each one of those is a different cost tier, but there's plenty of ways to differentiate them legally. And I hear you, Jim. I mean, you certainly want to cover the board and cover the commissioners as far as making sure that there isn't any legal liability out there. And I agree with you. but I do think we have the flexibility to do something. I do know that putting them on or saying that we can't do anything until April really handcuffs our ability to talk with them about Mayo Creek restoration. And town meeting approved the money to move forward on, you know, an engineering analysis of commercial, you know, commercial street and changes to the Mayo Creek, both the road and the culvert. And I would guess that there's the potential that they'd want to move forward on that project in like the spring or fall. And I doubt we're going to be able to do that if we don't have HVCC on board.
Yeah.
So that's just the constraints we're working with. That's all.
Right. So what would you see as the next step then, Kurt?
Well, I think it certainly makes sense to talk to legal counsel and say, look, here's the situation. Here's what we think we can do. Can we do it? And, you know, if we can, then it's up to the board to figure out under what terms. You know, I can do I did do some math on, you know, even using the current rate, what the revenues would be. It was about 10 or 15% more than what they're paying now. So if memory serves me correctly, well, I don't want to quote anything off the top of my head without looking at the spreadsheet, but it would be a significant customer for us, a significant amount of revenue.
Can you, is that something you could put together and share with us?
Sure. Yeah. I have all their consumption numbers, and I would just, you know, I could just use our rates and, you know, and show you what, you know, a couple of different options would look like.
But maybe if you could do that for an upcoming meeting, and then we could put it on the agenda and since it's not we're not making a decision, it's just we're looking at the various options here. I don't think it would require us going into executive session or anything. Just
okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that for the next meeting. I have all the data already, so it wouldn't be hard.
yeah, that would be great.
Okay. And then, you know, and I think it's a very good idea to, you know, to set up a meeting with town council to talk specifically about what, if any, concerns they have with regard to rate changes. They're probably going to want to consult with a municipal, somebody that's familiar with municipal rates. They probably don't have that expertise, but
yeah, well, but even before we go to Copeland and Page, I think that's something we have to bring to Charlie Sumner. I think they're holding the purse string, so to speak, there right now with legal counsel.
Right. Oh, we could, you know, and we get that information.
I have one other item before we close. So I just wanted to bring this up. If you and Tom, if we can make a decision on this, I don't know that we can, but and it's still about the financial model issue or the issue of the fees. We have certain people, you know, who are on the who have signed applications to to basically connect to the system, but haven't actually connected. And that there have been people that have done that, and we have several. I don't know if Karen has that number, but we have a fair number of them. Correct, Karen?
Yes, we do. I don't have the exact number. I didn't take my master sheet, sorry, but yes, I do have the numbers.
Yeah. So these are people that have been either paid their connection fee in full or are paying it through a deferred payment plan. but they have not connected to the system. They don't have a meter at their property, but they are being assessed a fee, the base service fee of, it's, I think, $80 some twice a year. Is that correct, right, Karen?
Yes, it is.
And I've gotten calls from a couple of people who are in that situation saying, why am I paying that? I don't take water from the system. And what's the benefit to me? And I really can't give them an explanation or a benefit now, because I don't understand that myself. Because if it's somebody who signed on when the connection fee was $6,000, it's still $6,000. So it's not like they're going to get, any savings on the connection fee in having done this before. But they're paying like $160 a year for the privilege of, well, I'm not sure what that privilege is now. So.
Well, I mean, regardless of where I am on whether we should be charging or not, there is benefit to them in terms of access to hydrant service and firefighting at their home because
Yeah,
water is
the person next door. But what I'm saying is that the person who lives next door to them is not signed an application to connect, and they have the benefit of the hydrant too. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just it's a disincentive for people to sign an application if they're not going to use it right away.
Well, I agree with you, but it's even more of a disincentive to have to, pay, have this high connection charge instead of just getting connected and that over time through a customer, through a service charge, through a customer service charge. We could extend the terms and it'd be less money for them. It's the same, we'd still get cost recovery. We just do it in a different way that makes it more attractive to connect.
Well,
So
I'm not sure why. Well, I don't, in terms of answering that question, I would say I'm not sure that there is a benefit to you to have signed a contract to connect when you're not when you haven't connected.
That was a bad idea in the beginning, but I agree. I don't know what the hell we do about it.
Well, we stop it. We stop taking the money from them until they actually connect to the system.
I would agree with that.
It's agreeable, yeah.
But Karen, we've got to get that list. We see what we're talking about here.
Because they'll have to pay it if they hook up.
Jim, do you agree?
Pardon?
Do you agree it shouldn't collect that anymore?
I agree. I don't think we should be collecting it until somebody actually has a connection.
So I'll make the motion. We send collection of.
Can we hold off for a minute, Kurt? What I'd like to do is have Karen give us the list so we could take a look at this, see what we're talking about here before we forego the base service fee. I'd like to know what we're talking about.
That would change your opinion about the equity of it?
Well, if it's five properties, that's one thing. But if it's 25 properties,
Yeah, it's more like that.
Is it?
Yeah, but I'll get you the numbers, but we're hemorrhaging as it is.
I know, but we can't. I understand that, but the number of calls that I've gotten recently from people that are upset with the way they're being handled, in the system, that's not good. We need to improve our customer relations here. We want more customers. We don't want to drive people away.
Yeah, I think
It's It's like an insurance policy. That's,
It
I
isn't
mean,
though.
I-
It was before. It's not anymore.
well, then raise the rate of the connection fee to 10,000.
No,
Don't give them the discount.
That's even worse, because then
That's worse.
you're disincentivizing people for connecting. What you do is you raise it to 10,000, but instead of charging them the 10, you amortize it over 40 years as a customer service charge. So it costs them nothing to hook up today, and they just start paying a different customer service charge that's higher than what people were paying
Wish they'd
before.
done that in the beginning.
We
Right.
should have, yes. That's why we need this rate analysis, that recommendation, you know.
So we're all on the same page, Karen. It's just about how you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are on the same page. I'm the one that's got to sort the data. If we had a computer that worked, it would be nice. But anyway,
Yeah.
so Jim, the last thing is, can we do the minutes, please? Can we?
Yeah. Yes, we can. So we had the minutes of the meeting of July 29th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have it in front of me. I looked it over. I don't have anything, any recommendations on it. And it does. Do either of you, Tom or Kurt?
No.
Okay. All right. So I look for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is that a second, Tom? Yeah,
Second.
second. Okay. And the vote,
Aye.
Tom?
Aye. Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay. So it passes 3-0. Okay. Thank you. The next meeting. Do you want to try to go 2 weeks out?
2 weeks,
I'm clear.
21st.
Yeah, the 21st.
Is that what you're looking at, Jim? The 21st?
Yeah, I'm looking right here now, so.
And it is the 21st.
It's fine
Yeah,
with me.
21st works for me.
Okay,
All right,
perfect.
good. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved it. Okay, second.
And
I'm just not
We're all
quick
in
enough.
okay, thank you. So we stand adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gail.
Bye,
Thanks, Jim.
everybody.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Bye, Gail.
Take care.
Yep,
Bye, Kurt.
Bye-bye.
bye now.